Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays, the show where we talk about 3 movies all in the same night. And for tonight's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Rocky trilogy of movies, starring Sylvester Stallone in the title role of Rocky Balboa. Now, before you bring it up, I am aware that there isn't just 3 Rocky movies. There are, in fact, 5 mainline Rocky movies, and then there's some weird 6th movie that I think is a reboot. I didn't look too far into it. And then there is the Creed trilogy of movies that have been coming out more recently that's kind of a follow-up trilogy of movies. And I'm aware of all of that. I don't care. We're just going to be sticking to the first 3 Rocky movies. I was originally planning on doing the first 5, and then I realized, hang on, I'm a busy college student who doesn't have time to watch 5 movies for my show. I can barely manage watching 3 in time for my show. So we're just going to stick to the first 3. And I'm very glad I went with that, because that way each movie gets its own dedicated segment. And what are the movies we're going to be talking about that have their dedicated segment? Well, let's get into our watch list. We're going to start off the night with Rocky from 1976, following up with Rocky II from 1979, and closing out with Rocky III from 1982. I'm really excited to jump into it, so we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll jump into the original Rocky. Stick around. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Rocky from 1976, available to rent from places such as Amazon, YouTube, and Fandango at Home. For the basic plot summary of the original Rocky, we follow the character Rocky Balboa, who is an underdog boxer from Philadelphia. He is essentially given a chance to fight the heavyweight champion of the world in terms of boxing, Apollo Creed. And while I've said basically and essentially, that's the main plot summary of the original Rocky. I should say that essentially everybody knows about Rocky. Basically everyone has heard of this movie before. You're familiar with it, even if you haven't seen it. You've seen parodies of Rocky. People are familiar with this franchise and specifically this first movie. You know, there's all those iconic scenes. We have the part where Rocky is training and he runs up the stairs. We have the part where he has the final fight scene with Apollo Creed. And we have the part where he yells Adrian. You know, Adrian, Adrian. I had to do that to get it out of my system. Otherwise, I was never going to get it out of my system, so forgive me for that nonsense. Now then, we know this movie. You listening to this right now know about Rocky. And because of that, when I was originally reviewing it, more so than any other iconic movie I've talked about, things such as Star Wars, Back to the Future, you know, Indiana Jones, those big movies out there, I wanted to ask the vital question with Rocky specifically, hey, are there any other iconic parts from the original Rocky that we just don't really talk about? Do we really remember these other scenes of Rocky besides those 3 things I just talked about? Are there other parts of this movie that are actually good and worthwhile? And I mean, to answer that first question of are there other iconic moments? Oh, absolutely. I'd say that the ice skating scene between Rocky and Adrian is actually downright iconic, and I'm a bit surprised that I completely forgot about it until I rewatched it. I thought, wow, this scene should be remembered as super iconic and really memorable. And I think it is. I'm sure it is somewhere out there, but to me at least, it wasn't iconic until I rewatched it. When it comes to other things, I didn't remember the dialogue for this movie being so iconic. I didn't remember it being memorable, snappy, really funny, fast-paced, conveys a bunch of character. It has meat and weight to it. I didn't remember that. And I didn't remember how good it was at providing commentary on Rocky's loneliness. I didn't remember how kind of bad you feel for Rocky for most of it. A lot of these things I don't remember after the first watch, but now rewatching the movie, I can confidently say all of those things are actually what make the original Rocky iconic. Sure, we have the stairs scene, and sure, we have the final fight, and sure, we have Rocky screaming Adrian. But a lot of those other elements are just as iconic and just as memorable when rewatching it. And because of that, I was just pleasantly surprised. When it comes to the quality of the movie, I would also say that all of those things in tandem make the movie really good. Because, completely honestly, I was so surprised to see that Sylvester Stallone can write to save his life. It's not something that you would have expected right off the bat, knowing that he's a big action star who's been in things like the Rambo movies and even later on in the Rocky series. The thing to keep in mind is that Stallone wrote the original Rocky. That's not like a theoretical, not just an unproven thing. It's pretty blazing. It's pretty blatant. He did write the script for the original Rocky. And because of that, you kind of forget that the lead actor of Rocky is not only able to write some really good dialogue, but also manages to be a fairly decent actor. Again, with how big of an action star Stallone is, I was just really pleasantly surprised to see, oh yeah, he's talented. He was talented back then. He was really knew what he was doing. He had an idea and he put it on paper, and then they executed it in the movie, and he manages to portray the character he wrote really well. I will also say that when it comes to the fact that there's that iconic moment of him both ice skating with Adrian and screaming Adrian's name, one thing I was completely oblivious to until rewatching is that Adrian, the character that Rocky ends up falling in love with, is played by Talia Shire. And I forgot how much I love Talia Shire. She's fantastic. She's a great actress. You know, honestly, because they work so well together, I completely forgot about how well they work together. It's so iconic that I forgot about it. That should be the new tagline for Rocky. It's so iconic you'll forget how iconic it is. That's legitimately the tagline I'd give this movie. It's so iconic you'll forget about it. That's the crazy part. I forgot how well they're paired together. I forgot their chemistry. I forgot what makes it work. Part of it is that Stallone can act. But part of it, I think, is that Talia Shire is just a better actor than Stallone is. I almost called him Rocky. She's just a better actress. And she has more development over the course of the movie than Rocky does. Rocky still has development, but I'd say that Adrian has more development. And because of that, she carries the movie so much more. I will also say that when it comes to the writing and the overall presentation and its commentary on loneliness, I think one big thing that the original Rocky really gets right is it manages a balance between story and plot, wherein the story is given more attention than the plot. Now, to explain that, so I'm not sounding super pretentious, what I mean by that is that we don't really follow a super rigid plot structure. It's not like, oh, here's the first act where he gets the invitation to go and fight with Apollo Creed, and then the second act is him training to a fight with Apollo Creed, and then Act 3 is him fighting Apollo Creed and all the build up to that. It takes its time, actually. It's around the middle of Act 2 where it's, oh, you've been invited to fight Apollo Creed. And then near the beginning of Act 3 is when we get to, oh, it's time to train to fight Apollo Creed. It takes its time getting to kind of the big plot progression moments of the movie. And most of it is spent with Rocky kind of on his own, existing in the Philadelphia area and him being alone and trying to find connection with the people around him and trying to get on a date with Adrian and meeting his friends and just kind of existing in his space. And for some reason, I just really liked that. I was completely fine with sitting through that. It's not a chore. It's not difficult to watch any of that. If anything, by the time he does get that invitation to fight Apollo Creed, I was kind of thinking, you know, if we took a little bit longer to just kind of exist in this space with Rocky before we got to that invitation, I wouldn't complain. I've got nowhere to be. We're kind of just living with this character right now. we're very intimately connected with him because he's very lonely. He's very sad and alone, and it's a very compelling character study. I don't really have any problems with just sticking around and watching this. I don't need to see the boxing part. We don't have to get there yet. But once we do get there, it still picks up in terms of pace, and it's still good. It's still very, very good to see all of that. Part of that is also helped by the fact that even with the boxing parts, we have some really good editing moments. We have some really good musical moments. We also have kind of an increase in the quality of the cinematography over the course of time. I really like how at first it almost feels like a gritty documentary drama type of a thing. And then as it goes on, it gets more cinematic in terms of style. That makes me sound super pretentious. So instead, I'll backpedal a little bit and say that probably the only thing that's consistently wrong with the original Rocky in terms of all of these points is that the sound quality of this movie, I'm not talking about music, I'm talking about dialogue sound quality, isn't the best. And because Stallone has a very particular way of talking, you know what I mean. It sounds like he has, I don't know, cotton balls in his mouth constantly. It's not always easy to understand what he's saying. So I had to have subtitles turned on most of the time, and even then, it was kind of a toss-up whether or not I could have watched it without subtitles. I don't think the sound mixing is the best in the original Rocky, and so one core principle of you need to have good sound mixing alongside good cinematography is kind of ignored in the favor of better cinematography, and I'm not mad, I'm just slightly disappointed that the sound isn't better, but I can get past it when the performance is this good. I will say, when it comes to performance, my least favorite part of the original Rocky is the character Paulie, played by Burt Young, Adrian's older brother. Paulie is annoying. I don't like him. I will admit, however, that Burt Young does a really good job of playing a detestable character, and I don't think you're exactly supposed to like Paulie, so I can let it kind of slide. I can definitely let it slide in favor of that ending fight scene. Now, as much as I've said that there's other iconic parts, we can't deny that the big moment, the big climactic fight, is definitely the best part of the original Rocky. I will fully concede to that point. It is climactic, it's fun, and I mean, it's got Carl Weathers playing Apollo Creed. Carl Weathers does a bang-up job at being a huge egotistical person in the form of Apollo Creed, and because of that, it's all the more fun to watch what ends up happening. If you've never seen this movie, which highly unlikely, but still, highly recommend watching it so you can see how it does end up ending. With all that being said, I think I've covered my bases pretty significantly and rather thoroughly with the original Rocky, so we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into Rocky 2. Stick around. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Rocky 2 from 1979, available to rent from places such as Amazon, YouTube, and Fandango at home. For the basic plot summary of Rocky 2, we pick up after his big fight with Apollo Creed, where Rocky Balboa must deal with not having any career direction in his life and being committed to his new wife, Adrian, while also possibly facing a rematch with Apollo Creed. Now, that may have been a clunky delivery of the plot summary, but it doesn't really matter because plot summaries are just a short component of what I do when I talk about movies here on this show, so whatever. Here's what we're going to say. This movie is essentially just a direct follow-up to the original Rocky, where Rocky is now going to have a rematch with Apollo Creed because of some things that happened. I won't even spoil how the original Rocky ends, because I don't want to. It's a very impactful ending, and I think it's deserving of just watching for itself. Although I did kind of spoil the fact that Adrian and Rocky get married in this movie, but whatever. Here's the thing. I want to emphasize that Rocky 2 is in fact a direct follow-up to the original Rocky in the sense that it is just the first Rocky, again, kind of. but it's also not exactly the first movie again. Kind of. And because of that, I would also say that it's weirdly not bad just because it is the first movie again. This is a very interesting dilemma that I've run into when talking about Rocky 2, because I would consider it a kind of expansion on the first movie. It makes sense for it to be a follow-up, and it goes in a certain direction that I think is worth exploring enough. It doesn't do anything better or worse significantly. It just has a very different style because Sylvester Stallone is now both directing, writing, and acting in these movies. So he has a different vision than what the director of the original movie wanted. And so there's just this difference there. Because of that, it doesn't feel any better than the original movie. I think the original one is stronger. But I also can't in good conscience say that Rocky 2 is that much worse. It's such a close comparison. It's like a minimal downgrade when you really look at it. It's left me in an awkward position because I'd say that basically the only real issue is that it takes a little longer to get going than the first movie. You know how I described that the original Rocky had a lot of story and not as much plot progression? And it took until maybe the midpoint of Act 2 for things to really get going in terms of plot, with him having the rematch with Apollo Creed, or the match up with Apollo Creed. Almost got confused there for a second. What I was going to say as a follow-up is essentially Rocky 2 takes that route again and just kind of waits a little bit longer to kind of set up the possible rematch with Apollo Creed. Because a lot of other things happen in the story where Rocky's trying to get a different job aside from boxing and trying to be committed to Adrian and also have some other things going on. And it's just kind of, he's in this weird state where, okay, what happened in the first movie has now happened. Now what? Now where does your life go, Rocky Balboa? What do you do now that you've had the shot that you've always wanted at the big time? And the result has been what the result was. Where do you go from here with your life? If I was to describe Rocky 2 in comparison to the original, while the original is a fascinating character study about a very lonely person kind of getting a chance at rising to the top, I'd say that Rocky 2 is an exploration of that same character after getting a shot at the top, reliving this sort of listless melancholy that came with being lonely, while also having people in his life now and having to deal with that. And to rephrase it in a way that's not pretentious, I think it's just kind of this exploration of Rocky doesn't get a job because he was a big deal and his fame is over. He had this 7 seconds of fame, and now they're gone. That's the non-pretentious way of saying all of that. He's essentially now trying to figure out, well, what do I do with my life now? And the reason I've got so conceptual with this one in comparison to the original is just because there's not much to really talk about in terms of the nitty-gritty stylistic choices. Because personally, I don't really like the change of editing, but it's not worse. I don't like exactly what happens before the final fight with Apollo Creed again, but it's an effective storytelling. I definitely don't like Paulie again, but that's not a huge change from the original movie. If anything, I think I may dislike Paulie more in this movie, but I can't really tell. I just kind of overall don't like Paulie, so it's kind of hard to gauge. When it comes to what I like the training sequence in this movie. But, you know, the first movie also had a pretty good training sequence, so it's hard to say which one is definitively better. I like the dynamic between Adrian and Rocky, but that was already a pretty strong point of the original movie. And I like the final fight, but I mean, I liked the final fight in the original Rocky as well. And I like Apollo Creed in Rocky 2. But Creed was already good in the original Rocky. This is the huge problem. I can't say, the only thing I can definitively say I like less than the original Rocky is the editing, and that's a personal thing, not a critique in terms of objective quality, because I think the editing still works completely fine. There's no problems with it. It's just different. It's just different stylistically. Because of that, I have nothing more to say about Rocky 2. It's a logical evolution of the original Rocky. It's one of the few times I can say confidently that just being the first movie again did it no harm and did it no good. It's just there. It's quality. You can watch it and you will get an experience out of it. And I guarantee that experience will be positive. So because of that, we're now going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll jump into the last movie, which will be Rocky 3. Stick around. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our third and final movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Rocky 3 from 1982, available to rent from places such as Amazon, YouTube, and Fandango at home. For the basic plot summary of Rocky 3, we now follow Rocky Balboa, who is on the verge of retirement, and he must face the absolutely brutal Clubber Lang, who is a new challenger, in order to prove himself to both his own ego and the world. And in order to do that, he possibly may need to team up with an old rival from the other two movies. Who could that be? Well, I mean, it might be Apollo Creed, but you'll never know. I mean, if you've never seen the movie, that is. If you've seen the movie, then you know it's Apollo Creed. But don't worry about that. So, Rocky 3. This is interesting because originally I was planning on talking about all 5 of the original Rocky movies, and instead I decided to cut it off here. And there's some reasons for that. Part of it is because Rocky 3 is the weakest of the 3. As I've often found with a lot of trilogies, the third movie can either be pretty decent or it can be pretty weak. It's kind of an either-or situation. There's very little times where it's just kind of the most middle of the road. It's either the best or the worst, or sometimes it's not the best, and it's just but it's not as good as the second movie, you know? So that makes it technically the worst. Now then, Rocky 3, I think, is interesting because it has the potential to be a really nice conclusion of a trilogy. I think the issue with Rocky 3 is that it both feels like a conclusion and is not a serviceable conclusion, because in my head, I'm sure they figured out, oh, we're going to make 4 and 5 after this, so we can't definitively end it yet. That's not how this works. Or maybe it's just the hindsight of knowing that they made 4 and 5, because honestly, why on earth did they do it this way? Here, let's just address kind of an elephant in the room, for me at least. I would say that this movie suffers from what I originally thought the first movie suffered from, which is that it just has iconic moments that we latch onto as a society or as a culture or as a zeitgeist, whatever, and we don't really regard the rest of the movie with anything at all. Because, let me ask you this. You remember that Rocky 3, if you've seen it, has Clubber Lang, who's played by Mr. T. You remember that, right? You know, I pity the fool. That's what he says. He just says, I pity the fool. And you remember that this movie has Eye of the Tiger in it. It's got a great training sequence. A couple of them, actually. A couple sequences that use Eye of the Tiger really effectively. And because of that, every movie ever that does parodies of training montages has used Eye of the Tiger. We know that. We know those two things for sure. But do you really, and I want you to think about this, do you really remember the part where Rocky fights a professional wrestler for charity, and that wrestler just so happens to be played by Hulk Hogan, and his name is Thunderlips? Do you remember Thunderlips played by Hulk Hogan? Do we remember that as a zeitgeist? Do we actually remember that moment? Because I gotta tell you, I'm gonna remember how much it detracted from the rest of the movie, that's for sure. But I don't think anybody's gonna actually believe me when I say that there's a character named Thunderlips played by Hulk Hogan in Rocky 3. People are gonna be like, oh no, that's the one with Mr. T and Clubber Lang and Eye of the Tiger. No, there's also Thunderlips. The only reason I fixated so much on Thunderlips is because they spent too much time on Hulk Hogan, to the point where it detracted from the overall pace of the movie. I feel that Rocky 3 is extremely scatterbrained, like I'm on the verge of becoming right now. Weirdly enough, I'm keeping it together, which is a first for me. I think that Rocky 3 struggles from being scatterbrained and having potential that only shows up once you're an hour into the movie, and it suffers from being extremely short compared to the other two. Okay, not extremely short, but it is 20 minutes shorter than about the 2-hour mark. It's only about an hour 40. And because of that, I think it suffers the most from its runtime, because it spends too much time on some other extraneous details before getting into the meat of the story. Not the plot, the story. The story revolves too much around certain things that do not get enough time. Again, that mention of Rocky teaming up with Apollo and a lot of the dynamics between Rocky and Clubber Lang, I feel as though Clubber Lang was given plenty of focus, and he deserved it. Rocky himself was also given some focus. Creed was not given enough focus. He needed more focus for this to really become that good third conclusion movie that gives us that full circle moment after the events of Rocky and Rocky 2. I feel as though just by the virtue of including Hulk Hogan as Thunderlips, we have wasted about 10 minutes that could have been spent getting to the point a lot faster, because there are certain things that happen in Rocky 3 that I feel deserved more development buildup and just overall exploration of. There was an idea there of making this about a sort of follow-up to Rocky 2, which was, okay, Rocky got a chance at the big time, now what? Now, after the events of Rocky 2, we have Rocky in his most popular state because of some things that happened in Rocky 2. And we have this sort of, okay, you're at the top of the world. Now what? Do you step down? How do you prove yourself to yourself? How do you conquer a new young challenger getting up in your face and basically demanding that you give your all to fight him? Clubber Lang represents a lot of that, and it's really cool to see. And there's a part that's kind of at the hour 10 mark where Rocky and Adrian have a really good discussion about exactly that theme. And all I'm doing is sitting there thinking, why did this movie that has this monologue and this conversation between these two great characters, with Talia Shire delivering a bang-up performance as Adrian again, have to include Thunderlips played by Hulk Hogan? I keep coming back to it because it's waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's stupid. It didn't need to be there. Get it out. Get it out and spend more time with Adrian. Adrian's great. We need more of her. We need more of her and Rocky. They're great together. Why are we sidetracking that? There needs to be more there. And there's other things that are really great, such as Clubber Lang, as I've mentioned. He's strong, he's capable, he's also extremely egotistical. There's so much room there to play around with it. It's part of what made Creed so interesting in the first two movies, his ego. And it's what makes him interesting in Rocky 3, but because we don't spend enough time with him, we don't get to see that play out as much, and I wanted to see it play out more, and it could have been a great conclusion. It just was too scatterbrained to get its point across. That's my big opinion here. And if you're going to say, well, you need to watch Rocky 4 and 5 to really get to those moments where Rocky and Creed have those moments and it expands on it a bit further, I'd say, as a response to that, that's not a good response. We should have focus on tying these two together in a third movie. Because we spend so much time with Creed as the adversary in the other two, you can't just brush it off as the middle of the five with Rocky 3 and say, oh, well, the other two expand on it more. You have the capacity and the time to expand on it in Rocky 3. You just do. Get rid of Hulk Hogan. That's how you get more time. Okay? That's how you get more time. And speaking of time, we are out of time for What to Watch Wednesdays. I want to thank you all for listening in to What to Watch Wednesdays this week. I will be back next week from 8 to 9 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg for another episode of What to Watch Wednesdays. If excuse me. If you want to follow along with What to Watch Wednesdays, follow along at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps and spaces, on both YouTube and Instagram. And I will be back next Wednesday telling you all what to watch. Good night, everybody.